So today I want to show how you can use SSH to connect your Raspberry Pi from your own computer and run a Python script that is saved in your Raspberry Pi. What's the purpose of this, or why would you want to do this? An example of a real life use case would be that you have your Raspberry Pi connected to, let's say, a set of sensors that get data on an hourly or daily basis. And you want to access this data that you obtained by running a Python script that is saved in your Raspberry Pi. And how would you do this, let's say, if you are not in a location where the Raspberry Pi is actually hosted? So in an instance like this, what you can do is actually SSH into your Raspberry Pi, run a Python script, and get this data. And that's kind of what I want to show today. So I have here a simple toy example of a Python script that simply, iterates through a set of numbers and prints those numbers and show that you have completed this iteration. This Python script is saved in your Raspberry Pi. Now, before you are able to run this Python script, you have to connect your Raspberry Pi using SSH. How would you connect to your Raspberry Pi? So the first thing you want to do is make sure that you have enabled SSH in your Raspberry Pi. And the way to do that would be to go and click on this application menu, go to Preferences, and click on the Raspberry Pi configuration. Once you click on this, you will click on this option that says Interface and enable SSH. Once you enable SSH, you hit OK. Now, the next thing you want to do is you want to find the IP address of your Raspberry Pi. And the way to do that is to type this command ifconfig. And here you see in this line the IP address of your Raspberry Pi. You can simply, write it down or copy it somewhere. I'm just going to copy it. And once you know your IP address and once you've enabled your SSH, all you have to do now is, go to your laptop or the machine that you're working on. You can open up, PowerShell or command prompt, and simply type SSH pi at and copy the IP address that you got from your Raspberry Pi. Once you click enter, it's going to ask for the password of your Raspberry Pi, and you may have set the password. So I'm going to type my password for the Raspberry Pi, and I am now in the Raspberry Pi. So before you are able to run that Python script, I want to quickly show you where the Python script is. So I have saved it as test.py here. And what I want to do next is to see what sort of Python version that I have in the Raspberry Pi. So I can type Python -- version. So I have Python 3.9. So it's Python 3, which means if I want to run this, I'm going to type Python 3 and then test.py. There it is. We connected to the Raspberry Pi using SSH, and we were able to run that Python script that we saved, that was saved in your Raspberry Pi. Hope this helps. Thank you.